Australia produces 170 million tonnes of coal annually, with more than a third coming from the Hunter, and most of this is exported. A weak export coal price means tough times for the industry, and the Hunter is no exception. But the message from the many national and international coal heavyweights at this seminar was that there's light on the horizon. 87% of the world's energy comes from the fossil fuels, coal, gas and the major player oil. By the year 2010, it's predicted coal, because it's cheap and in plentiful supply globally, will become the largest single source of primary energy worldwide. But if Australia is to tap into this increased demand, we must become more competitive, because many other countries in the coal business haven't begun to tap into the export market Australia relies upon. For example, China exports only 20% of its total output, while America a mere 10%.
Technologically, our mining is as good as anywhere in the world. The way in which Australia can increase the employment for mine workers is to be so competitive that the industry in total expands and new developments occur.
The Mine Workers Union believes it's a case of getting back to basics.
Unless we get our act together, unless we have a comprehensive plan which involves commitments by the federal government, state governments and the employers and workers alike to ensure that we take advantage of these opportunities, then we will continue to wallow as we currently are.
Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Honeysuckle was resurrected yesterday when Premier John Fay announced the state government would reverse an earlier decision and support the project to get $71 million of federal Better Cities funding. What's more, the state committed itself to $30 million, only a third of the $100 million it originally agreed to, but enough to put a smile on Lord Mayor John McNaughton's face about Honeysuckle's future.
It is the most significant event that's taken place in the city since the BHP established here in 1915.
Alderman McNaughton is confident by Christmas a transport study will be underway, as will the groundwork for housing in Carrington and Wickham, and that means jobs.
We can look at 300 to 1,000 in the first year, and that's what we'll be working to, and that will happen. It's just a matter of driving it now to get the work done, and those jobs will flow.
Not so optimistic is federal member for Newcastle Alan Morris, who the Fay government says contributed to almost sinking the Honeysuckle project by opposing plans to cut the rail line at the Civic.
We're not prepared to put what is effectively a $30 million state government investment into this particular project, whilst ever the railway wasn't going to stop.
While Mr Morris has accepted the state's right to remove the line, the federal MP now has a different and what the state government claims is an outrageously wrong reading of the rail's future.
I suspect the rail issue is now dead as an issue because the state government is accepting that it will need to keep it there.
Mr Morris is also worried the state government's $30 million will be whittled away by projects outside Honeysuckle, such as relocating the Maritime Services Board.
My concern at the moment is that $30 million could become less than $10 million.
It's those kinds of details that Mr Morris wants negotiated by all three levels of government before any agreement is signed. A spokesman for the Deputy Prime Minister says the federal and state governments should sign the Better Cities contract within a couple of weeks. He says once that's done, the long-awaited work on Honeysuckle can begin. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Ruth and Philip Keach were sound asleep at 5 o'clock this morning. At 5:05, they heard an earth-shattering crash.
Well, it felt like another earthquake at first, but it stopped a bit too quickly, so I figured it wasn't an earthquake.
A power pole had in fact fallen onto the roof of their house in Gayton Close at Warners Bay, right above where Ruth was sleeping. She was covered with debris.
I think I'm extremely lucky.
The pole didn't penetrate the roof, but it did do considerable damage.
The tiles and wood in the roof is damaged. There's a small hole in the plaster in the ceiling.
The Keachers live on a double block and the pole supplied power to the property behind. It was privately owned but was replaced this morning by Shortland Electricity. It's not uncommon for power poles to rot at the base. There are 180,000 poles in the Hunter region serviced by Shortland Electricity. So far this year, around a dozen poles have collapsed, including this incident 3 months ago, where a pole fell onto the Nelson Bay Road at Saltash. It blocked traffic for most of the day. Two months ago, Lake Macquarie Council sent this document called Living with Lead to the state government. It details the problem of lead contamination in Bullaroo and the action which needs to be taken to clean up the area. It also asks for government help. While it's not known how much it will cost to remove the lead from the suburb, the document says it could be around $10 million just to decontaminate 1,500 houses. The community, the council and Pasminco believe it's the government's responsibility to pay. In a letter to Council, Premier Fahey says he's passed on the Living with Lead document to the Minister for Health and the Minister for the Environment. But when we contacted them, both knew nothing about Council's request. It appears the document and the plea for assistance have become lost.
I'm just anxious that the government acknowledges that this particular document, and that also conveys to the community through the council or directly through the members of parliament to the community that they are going to proceed to assist this community in addressing the problem of lead contamination.
The Mayor wants a delegation to meet Environment Minister Chris Hartcher and Health Minister Ron Phillips to explain the urgency of the situation. Also today, Mayor Carley ordered a halt to the processing of 149 certificates which include a lead warning. According to the Mayor, a council officer ordered the inclusion of the warning on properties for sale in the Bullaroo area without council permission. The matter will go to council on Monday night. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Much has changed for Cecily Featherston Hoare since her daughter disappeared in 1979. She has since remarried after her first husband, John Zollis, died without ever knowing what happened to his only daughter, Amanda. She called home one night on October 12, 1979.
Mandy rang up on a Thursday night, this was 13 years ago, and just said she'd like to go to Queensland. My father got a shock and he said, "Who with?" No answer. And the phone went dead.
Amanda could be a rebellious teenager, but her mother says there's much that doesn't make sense about that last abrupt message. Amanda had no money and no spare clothing.
Why couldn't she have come home, got clothes, got money and left through the night?
Mrs Featherston Hoare believes Amanda must have left the city with someone, perhaps against her will. Police have set up a phone number for people who do not wish to speak directly to relatives to at least confirm that they are alive and well. Perhaps someone who travelled with Amanda Zollis could provide that information. The number is 008 025 091. Amanda's mother says any information could relieve more than a decade of painful memories.
Especially birthdays, Christmas, Mother's Day. It's a very stressful thing, and if it wasn't for my Christian faith, I think I would have gone around the twist many a time.
Central Charlestown's thumping win over Curry last week kept their semi-final hopes alive, and tonight it's the Butcher Boys' moment of truth. To make the semis, they must beat third-placed Lakes United at Carl Oval and upset Waratah Mayfield tomorrow. Lakes have dropped their last 3 and will be keen to beat Central to put the pressure on South for the home ground advantage in the qualifying final next week. The match between South and undefeated West should be a beauty. Curry will want to continue their charge to the flag, while North Nelson Bay and Cessnock are playing for pride. While the Rugby League boys battle their bodies for 80 minutes, spare a thought for Dave Weaver, who is about to set out on a 6,500 kilometre bike ride from Amaroo Park in Sydney to Darwin as part of the Australian Safari Race. The self-confessed weekend hack, a former Utah resident, is a little wary about the trip, but he's fulfilling a long-held desire.
I really like motorbikes. I've been wanting to see the outback of Australia since I was 7. It's just one of those dreams that you have, and when we saw this competition, it's just one of these things that just happened, and now I'm in.
And as a father of 7, this could be a timely break.
Actually, I'll probably get more sleep out there than I do at home. so it may be a welcome break, but we'll find out.
With no illusions about winning the race, the challenge is to make Darwin.
There's some professional racers there that really know their business. We're weekend trail riders, and our challenge is to try to get to Darwin.
The queues of people waiting for elective and cancer surgery are growing in Lower Hunter hospitals. The waiting list now ranks among the 3 longest in the state, and doctors are concerned.
One of them rang me the other day to say he's now got 50 patients on his waiting list. He says, look, even breast cancer patients are being delayed. Major problem.
Dr Howe says elective and cancer surgery patients are constantly having treatment cancelled or rescheduled, with the wait often intensifying the emotional trauma. The problem is at crisis point.
The MARTA even acknowledges that there are times, and it's not infrequent, where patients are waiting on stretchers, trolleys in the casualty to the extent that the casualty has to close. Now those patients are waiting for a bed to get into either theatre or medical beds.
Compounding the problem, Dr Howe claims the number of cases waiting haven't, up until recently, been recorded. So the situation may be even worse than thought. Dr Howe's solution is reopen Wallsend Hospital.
I think we need 2 wards opened at Wallsend Hospital. 2 surgical wards just for elective surgery will take all the pressure off the MARTA, will take all the pressure off the John Hunter.
Hunter Area Health Service Administrator Dr Tim Smythe says this isn't possible because the funds required aren't available. But Dr Smythe says he'll discuss the proposal with the Hunter Medical Association later this month. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
(13-2, 13-4 and 2-1 in favourite. At Caulfield, the EJ Kennan handicap again provided a sensational finish. Protest 4th against first was upheld. 7-1, 8-1 and even money favourite. At Broadmeadow, the 7th was the Newcastle RSL Club Open Handicap over 1,200 metres. $5.40 and 2, 10, 160 and 460, and the trifecta $200.90.
Last night saw a dramatic change to the rally. The Subaru of leader Possum Bourne slid off a rain-slicked forest trail and rolled, a broken suspension part preventing the crew continuing. And the Toyota Celica of second-placed Neil Bates was out with a blown head gasket. 24-year-old Sydney driver Craig Stallard took over the lead in his Galant VR4, while Bourne's teammate Rob Herridge kept his Subaru going at a steady pace to hold down second. Herridge, the clear leader in the Australian Championship Series, knew he needed only a top 3 finish to virtually sew up this year's title. Starting in overall third place was local driver Wayne Hoy in a four-wheel drive Nissan GTI-R. In ideal conditions today, every driver attacked the course, treating the large crowd of spectators to some spectacular action. Not all of it planned. West Australian Jerry McGroherty went gardening in his Mitsubishi, while John Graydon left his mark on the course. Hoy picked up time on Herridge on almost every stage, but the Subaru driver was more worried about Graham Alexander, the only other driver with a championship chance. In a fine drive, Stallard recorded the biggest win of his career, 2 minutes ahead of Herridge, Hoy coming in a further 33 seconds down. The result gives Herridge the Australian Championship title, even though 2 rounds remain. Daihatsu has claimed the Manufacturers' Championship. Jim Sullivan, NBN News.
These young men and women are getting a taste of what it's like to be in the armed forces. They're Naval Reserve cadets. 13 to 19-year-olds can work their way up from recruits to petty officers. While that doesn't mean they must follow a career in the Navy, it does give them an opportunity to learn self-discipline and to pick up other nautical skills. This weekend, the gates of Ballina's Training Centre were open to the public. A religious service was conducted by the Reverend Ian Davis. While this was the unit's first open day, organisers hope to make it an annual event.
Now I've built the toilet.
The Everton Street house was a ball of smoke within seconds. It caught Tallis Thor Pallamore from the Newcastle Hunters basketball team by surprise. He'd been working on some domestic chores in the bedroom of his rented home.
The heater, man, fell over and burnt up everything. I tried to put it out. It got too big, couldn't put it out.
His flatmate, another American basketballer, tried to call the fire brigade, but arriving in Australia just 4 months ago, she was unfamiliar with the 000 emergency number.
I had to run over to the store because I didn't know the Australian number's emergency. So I ran over here and then the fire department arrived and we got out.
Firemen from Hamilton and Newcastle needed breathing gear to fight the blaze, but the fire had already destroyed the back half of the weatherboard house. A neighbouring property was slightly affected by the intense smoke. As officers inspected the site, they repeated warnings of a common fire threat in winter.
Be very careful with any sort of heater. Actions like this are going to happen if you are unlucky enough to knock one over.
Peter Ryan, NBN News. With drama becoming a subject for the higher school certificate, more and more students are getting involved. 16 schools have joined the Hunter Region Drama Festival, 4 more than last year. It's 2 days of performing arts, from classical works of Shakespeare to confronting modern plays on drug abuse.
A lot of the pieces that are performed are pieces that students have devised. They're issues that they want to deal with.
The festival performances are limited to a select audience, but next year organisers are planning a public season, giving theatre lovers a chance to see the budding stars in action. It's a common term in teenage jargon, pigging out. The perception is Australian male 16 and 17-year-olds don't care about their diets and their physiques. But the boys, it seems, are just as vain as their sisters.
I was very surprised at how sensitive they are about their bodies and that they really are feeling as much pressure as girls.
Lecturer in nutrition education at Sydney University, Jenny O'Day, has surveyed nearly 200 teenagers in a 2-year study. She's found only 34% of boys believe they are in the right shape. Most want to look like their sporting heroes, thin but muscular, and in extreme cases that can involve taking protein and muscle building powders, or as is the American example, steroids. Jenny O'Day believes in the next decade eating disorders like anorexia and bulimia will become a major health issue for teenage boys, as pressure builds to have the perfect body. Ms O'Day says it's a problem that's easy to avoid using a common sense diet.
The message for both boys and girls is 3 meals a day with snacks and a variety of foods, and don't cut out important food groups like milk and dairy products and meat.
Fire officers were on the scene just minutes after receiving the call at 7:30 last night. But despite their quick action, they were unable to save much of the fibro-walled, iron-roofed cottage. It was unoccupied, the last tenants moving out just 2 days ago. Police have been told a man was seen leaving the area just before the fire was noticed, and their inquiries are continuing. It appears it started in the lounge dining area of the house and spread quickly through the old structure. Firemen could do little but minimise the damage and prevent the flames spreading. One fireman received a slight burn to the back of his neck during the operation. The house was the only remaining structure on a new subdivision about to be developed behind the industrial area northwest of Taree towards Wingham.
The Gold Coast will remember their trip to Newcastle earlier this year on the end of a 42-6 spanking at the hands of the Knights outfit on fire. Newcastle has continued their surge towards the semis, while Wally's boys are stirring the wooden spoon right in the ladle. And good news for the Knights, Robbie McCormick will take his place carrying 14 stitches into the match. Paul Markwood is a real chance of playing, and Tony Kemp is almost certain to start. And on the bench, 19-year-old giant Rodney Howe. In 1989, Howe received the Carlson Club scholarship, and the next year was captain of the undefeated SG Ball side that clinched the Knights their first major trophy. At Australian and state schoolboy honours, and this year the Australian under-19 merit team, the President's Cup, reserve grade, and now first grade. Rodney Howe is calm at the prospect.
It should be good for experience, but hopefully I just go there and do my job and not make too many mistakes. Hopefully it'll be a good day, good experience, I think.
Any nerves?
Oh, there is a few, yeah, because there is a few experienced guys in the Gold Coast lineup, so there will be, yeah.
Howe faces an awesome task in tipping out Sargent and Harrigan for a full-time spot in first grade, but his expectations for 92 are centred solely around the club itself.
I hope to make the semis, you know, and hopefully with reserve or first, make the semis that go well and all three in the semi-finals for the club.
St Pius, the 10th Year 8 English teacher Anne-Marie Shipman, has always been a part of rugby league. Her father Alan Williams and brothers Phil and Dale are integral members of the Curry Football Club, but it wasn't until Anne-Marie was a teacher that she took an active role in the code.
It was when I was at St Peter's at Maitland and Cole Love was looking for someone else to take a rugby league team up there, and he thought, oh well, Anne-Marie's got the background for it, so I said yes.
A couple of weeks ago, when the Knights played Manly, Anne-Marie was on job experience as a sports trainer, entrenched in the cauldron of the Knights dressing room, learning the finer points of player pre-match preparation, and Big Sarge didn't seem to mind a bit. For Anne-Marie, combining teaching and sports training is important.
I think that's why I did the sports trainer, because I thought if I've got a rugby league team, I know there's lots of injuries that occur in a rugby league team, and the sports trainer would just help me and cover me as well. And so, yeah, I knew what I was, if I got the level 1 sports trainer, I'd know what I was doing and dealing with.
And the state touch footballer takes her job as head coach of Year 8 at Pius just as seriously as David Waite does the Knights. With last-minute instructions and being the club doctor on occasions. And Anne-Marie Shipman hopes more women will take up the challenge.
Just judging from the response at St Pius, a lot of the younger girls there are interested in rugby league and interested in particular in the sports trainer field as well. So hopefully some of those will take up the initiative and do the courses and get involved.
Foster in the red and white made it into the final 4 of the competition with a win at home today against the Metro West champion team Dawson Primary School from Penrith. With a strong and controlled forward game, Foster kept the visitors scoreless, at the same time amassing a huge 43 points of their own with tries scored mainly through the backs. Foster will now play Tormina Primary from Coffs Harbour in a semi-final. The final of the Westmont Shield will be played at Parramatta Stadium on the 19th of September. The Foster community will be watching the future success of the team with interest. Several local firms came good with sponsorship when it was made known the 11 and 12-year-olds would again take a crack at the coveted Rugby League Shield. Newcastle and Wollongong were the only stations selected from outside Sydney to become demonstration patrols. This morning, the top brass launched the scheme, which it says will foster excellence in policing. Newcastle Patrol Superintendent Ian Cleary.
What's going to happen perhaps over the next 12 months, 2 years, a lot of ideas and initiatives will be put to us, and we will put them into practice, we'll evaluate them, and if they are worthy, we'll then put them into practice throughout New South Wales.
4 probationary constables from Goulburn Academy have been stationed at Newcastle. They'll undergo a 3-month training program. Better policing practices is the catch cry. They want people to feel comfortable in the Newcastle station. Hence the glass doors, giving the impression of openness. A waiting room, a larger charge room, all part of making this role model patrol a friendly place. Anthony Griffiths, NBN News.
They call themselves the Simple Slimming Club. It started in Newcastle 16 years ago and now boasts 50 clubs from Wyong to Dungog with over 1,000 members. Today they honoured their greatest achiever of the year, Helen Henderson of Wyong.
How do you feel now?
I feel fantastic, yes.
Helen lost 58 kilograms in 23 months. Not far behind was Denise Wood of Adamstown. She lost 56 kilos. The club works on group support. Each member has an advisor. Helen's was Dulcie Harris.
I always say you don't do it to look better than the lady next door, you do it for your own health, and that's what we look upon, the people's health and looking for a healthier heart, and in the long run you get a better looking body about it too.
It was a majestic sight as the replica of the Bounty sailed out of Newcastle Harbour this afternoon. It had been in dry dock for the last fortnight for a refit. The Bounty is bound for Sydney with 11 crew and 6 passengers on board. However, the captain's not concerned about a repeat of the ship's most famous incident, the mutiny under William Bligh.
Dean Ward, the younger brother of international cricketers Mark and Steve, together with Brad McNamara, are conducting coaching clinics with school students. For Dean, the Narrabri clinic is a first. Till now, he's only held the coaching session at Sydney schools. He says the clinics are valuable.
They probably don't get too many chances like this for, Sydney grade players and state players like Brad to come up, so yeah, it's probably good for them, I think.
Dean is hoping to play his way into the New South Wales Sheffield Shield side this season, but he says competition for a spot will be fierce.
There's a lot of other blokes that are good players as well at the moment that are pretty close, so I think whoever gets runs on the board, that's who they're going to look at, I think. So we've just got to try and get some early runs on the board.
Dean says there is some good talent at Narrabri.
There's a bit of talent there. They hit the stumps a few times. Probably teach me a few things about bowling, but yeah, they seem pretty good. Keen, that's the main thing, I think. They want to learn, so that's probably the most important thing. They look to be enjoying themselves, so